All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a mobile device. If you are on a laptop or desktop computer that has a larger screen, it's usually going to be to the right of the video. So I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So I'll be starting with Jesus P. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them in there. The reason why I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before is because I want to answer questions for people who I think are probably here waiting to see their question get answered. So Graham V, Harry W, if you're still on here, all you got to do is just repost your question, and I'll be happy to answer for you. So let's go ahead and get started here. And real quick note as well, no office hours on Thursday or Friday in observance of the holiday Thanksgiving here in the United States. If you're not from the U.S., it's probably not a holiday where you are. But in the U.S. here, we got Thanksgiving, so we're not going to have office hours on those days. I noted it on the page. So yeah, hopefully we'll get your questions answered today and tomorrow, and we'll be good to go until next week. So as I mentioned, Jesus P, who we're going to start with, says Q, on the stable fluid spine drill, Clay talks about doing 1,000 reps, 100 per day. Then he says to do 3 different setups for faster results, but not how many in a row of each per day. Can you talk about it? Yeah, so I would just do, I would alternate between doing those reps, doing the different ways. Now to get in 100 reps a day. If you want to do it exactly even, you can do 99 reps a day, because obviously 100 isn't divisible by 3 evenly. So you can do 99. I wouldn't get caught up in really all the details as much. I would really just focus on trying to get as many reps in as you can every day, and you'll be able to knock those out and be really comfortable with those. So Jesus, what Jesus is talking about is, I believe, the stable fluid spine drill, where we're talking about getting the right amount of spine tilt, leaning toward the target and leaning too far away. And it's actually been scientifically proven that if you vary what you're doing, right, so you go too far away, to too much leaning toward the target, and then right in between where you want to be, it actually helps you to get a better awareness of it and to have it stick a little bit better. If you just practice getting in the perfect spine tilt for 1,000 times, you're not going to learn it as much. You're not going to learn as fast. So I would recommend doing the right spine tilt too much and leaning too much toward the target. Alternate between doing those. I try to do 100 a day of that. So set up with the tilt. So what you can actually do with this as well is you can set up with the tilt and actually lean toward the target and take a swing, right? And then take a swing from there. Then you can do it where you're leaning slightly away from the target. So when you lean toward the target, what you can do is you can take the club, put it right down the middle of your trunk here, and then leaning toward the target would be, I would have it where it's on the inside of your leg there, inside of your trail leg. So that would be too much leaning toward the target. And then I would do the good one, which would be where it would be just on the inside of your foot. So if I have it right in the center of my trunk here, go to the inside of my leg, now you can see that's my perfect tilt. And then to get a little bit more, what I would do is I would go to where it's kind of like on the outside, right? So I'm too far angled away, or maybe I'm more on my knee here. That's going to get me too far angled away, and I'll practice that tilt. And I'll alternate between doing those. And I'm telling you, you do it that way. It may seem, I know it seems kind of far-fetched off the wall or whatever, but it will really help you to understand exactly where good is. So going from one end of the spectrum to the other helps you really understand and get a better awareness of where you actually want to be. I know it seems silly to practice where you don't want to be, but it helps you to understand more where you want to be. So I would recommend doing 1,000 reps total of those. And, if you do 3, if you go through it, alternate going through it, and you do, it would be 99 a day, then you'll be in really good shape in no time. So Matthew W says, can you give any tips or drills for promoting an in to out path? I pull the ball left. Usual the usual drills, setting up a gate so I don't come over the top, have not worked. So looking for something novel. Yeah, so that's the drill. There's nothing magic behind doing this. And you mentioned how they haven't worked, and the reasoning why they probably haven't worked is probably because you're trying to do it in a full swing. Now there's several reasons why you may be coming over the top, but what you have to do is you have to start out with short, slower swings first, and then work your way up, right? So if you just set these up, right? So let's say I set this up, and this is kind of what he's talking about. He or she, it's Matthew. So it's setting up these obstacles to where it kind of forces you to swing into out, right? So I have these obstacles here, and I have this set up to force me to swing the club from in to out, right? So if I don't, I'll hit these things. So it sounds like Matthew has tried this, but he still hits them, right? So what he needs to do is start out with some slow chip shots. So what I would try to do is I'd set these up, and I would just do a swing where I come up to here and I pause, and I focus on swinging these into out. And I go really slow at first. Once I get that, then I'd work it up, basically to where I'm doing kind of a full swing doing that, and get some little draws going. They're not going to draw very much because there's not a lot of speed going on, but it should curve just a little bit right to left, start to the right, and curve a little bit to the left. And when you're doing these little shots, the little ones should be going no more than 40 yards, 30, 40 yards, just with a little tiny draw on them. If you're using an 8-iron, that's about how 7, 8-iron. That's how far they would go. Once you get that, then I would go up to a little bit longer. I would go up to a 3/4 swing. I would go up here and I'd pause, and I'd really try to work. And the reason why you pause is because it helps you organize what you're doing. That's why you're having trouble with it, because things are moving too fast, and you don't have any time to really organize what you're doing. Right now, if you're really having trouble with these certain things, I would look at your spine angle, because like I said, there's a million things that could be going on that aren't helping you to swing in to out. So your spine angle being one, make sure you're nice and angled away at the top of the swing to help you to swing from in to out. Your right elbow could be another one. If you're a right-handed golfer, if we get the elbow working out like this, right, it's going to be impossible to miss those things. So we need to feel, if we got the spine angle, we need to feel that right elbow working from the inside. The face being too open could be another one. So maybe you're bringing the club open like this. If the face is open, a lot of times what people are going to want to do is they're going to want to swing to the left, right, over the top to get the face closed. It's a natural instinction that a lot of people have. So we want to make sure that we get the face more close, so that way we can swing more into out in the downswing. So those are a few things. It's hard to say exactly what you're doing in particular, but my best advice would be this is the best thing you can do. It is the best thing you can do. And I know you can't do it right now. That's why you have to start out with short, slow swings and then build it up from there. And don't rush it, right? Don't rush to the long swings. Get to where you get 3 in a row good ones with the short pot, and you can even do the pausing, right, to help you organize what you need to do and swing that into out, right? And then once you get that going a little bit better, then I would go to get 3 in a row. Then I would just progress it a little bit further to either go take out the pause, go a little bit faster, go a little bit longer with the swing. Then once you get it there, 3 in a row, again, I would progress it a little bit further, and you keep progressing it until you're able to get it with a full swing. Once you're able to get it with a full swing, you're doing it with like a 7 or an 8-iron. Then I would try to go up go up a club, right? Go up a club or two and do the same thing there. If you're not able to do it in a full swing, so let's say you're doing it with an 8-iron right now, you can go up to a 6-iron next and try it there, because it's going to be a little bit more difficult with longer clubs. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. So just by nature, because the club's a little bit longer. If you're not able to get 3 in a row, you've tried 50 reps and you just can't get 3 in a row with a 6-iron, then I would back it down and do a shorter, slower swing, and try to get there, and then try to build it up again. Once you're able to get 3 in a row good ones with the 6-iron, then I move it up again to another club. Basically, keep moving up the ladder of the clubs until you get to the driver. And at that point, you do the same thing. Once you get to where you're able to do with the driver, then I take these things away, move them out of the way, and then I try to do that same exact thing move back down to like the 7-iron, and then try to do the exact same thing there. But yeah, I know it may seem daunting, but it's just something that you're going to have to work through. But you got to start out slow and then build your way up. And I would just try to exaggerate it as much as possible. I try to feel like you're swinging way out to the right. There's no magic drill or anything that I'm going to give you that I can give you that's going to make you suddenly get it. You have to start out. You have to build the motor pattern. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Really exaggerate things as much as you need to, and you'll be in much better shape if you do that. Oops. So David S. says, does the weight shift to the left side start with bumping the hips or putting pressure on the left foot? It frequently feels that I don't have enough time to properly put weight on the right side before having the shift to the left. That's most likely because you're getting pressure into your trail side too late. So that's a very common issue that I see, is that people who struggle with their weight shift usually struggle to get pressure into their trail foot right away. A lot of times when I see people struggle with the weight shift, what they're doing is they start with the arms going back, and then in the last part of the backswing, they start to shift their weight to their trail side. By that time, that's when they should actually be shifting to their lead side. So what I would try to feel like is right away, even before the club starts going back, I would try to get pressure going into that trail foot. So I would try to feel like, boom. One thing you can do is do a drill where you start out pretty balanced at address here. As soon as the club starts going back, get pressure going into that trail foot and pause halfway up, right? So I have a lot of pressure right here in my trail foot. I'm putting as much pressure as I possibly can into my trail foot without moving my mass. I don't want to go like this, right? I want to keep my mass centered, but I want to put pressure into my trail foot. So if I feel that, you can see how I'm not moving my hips this way. I'm not sliding my hips. I'm putting pressure into the ground. I'm pushing my hips. And then from here, what I try to feel like is now I'm going to move into my lead side. See, I'm moving to my lead side. I'm shifting pressure into my lead side. And I don't like bump. A bump, a hip bump, it makes me feel like this, right? I don't want to feel a hip bump. I want to feel my whole body moving forward, right? A hip bump is more like this. That's where to me, when I think hip bump, and usually when players think hip bump, this is typically what I see, is they'll go like this, right? That's not what we want. We want our whole body moving forward, the whole momentum shift. All right, so up to about halfway up in this area, loaded up pressure, pause, and then from there we're moving to our lead side. If you're having trouble feeling like you don't have enough time to get on your trail side and then get to your lead side, it's because you're not loading up soon enough in your trail side. So load up right away and do that without sliding your hips. Turn the hips, load up, and as you're getting up to the top, that's when you're getting to your lead side, and then you're putting pressure into the ground and swing all the way through. So do some really slow practice swing reps where you're going here, loading up, you're pausing, going up to the top as you're moving forward, and then swinging through. Do some really slow practice swings doing that, and then build up the speed from there. Then add the golf ball after that. So David CM says, I need a floor ground reference on how to swing inside out in relation to my stance. Please use both alignment sticks. The question is, where do I place going away from me and the target? Thanks. Not sure. I need a floor ground reference on how to swing inside out relation to my stance. Please use both alignment sticks. The question is, where do I place going away from me and the target? Thanks. Guess I'm not really sure exactly what you're asking for, but like I talked about earlier, what you can do is you can set up these guys here. You can use alignment sticks. I would also use these. I like using the alignment sticks because they can also help you get an idea of whether you're hitting it in the center of the face or not. Because with these, you can, if I set up so if I have my ball set up here, and I have my stance, right? So I have my stance, it's straight ahead. I have these balls set up to where, or I have these obstacles set up to where if I hit them, it's going to give me feedback. But, with this, I can also, I could swing on plane and hit the ball off the toe and probably hit that thing or probably hit this one. And if I hit the ball on the heel, I'm probably going to hit that one and maybe miss that one. So that can happen. So one thing you can do as well is you can set a club or an alignment stick, right? Club and or an alignment stick, kind of like this. And you can set them kind of close together to where it's giving you feedback. Now set them parallel to the ground to where it's a little bit wider than your club, right? So we move this a little bit tighter on this one. So I like this because it gives you feedback to where, okay, I'm swinging into out, and I'm also getting feedback. If I hit it way on the toe or way on the heel, I'm probably going to hit that one. If I hit it way in the toe, I'm probably going to hit that one, right? So it forces me to get this path to be working it out. It's giving you feedback. That's what you're wanting to have. If you don't have feedback like this, it can be kind of a pain in the butt because you got to know ball flight laws a little bit. That would be helpful, which it's not super complicated, but if you're not a real technical person, it can be difficult to quantify these things. And then you also need to know what you're looking at on video. So on video, if the club's if I have the right camera angle, which is kind of half the battle too, if the club's working really outside of my hands, that's going to be an indication of over the top. If it's working very much inside my hands, that's going to be an indication of too much from the inside. And if it's in line with my hands, then it's going to be on plane. But you have to be careful with it, right? Or it's going to be close to on plane. It's not an exact science with the video, so it's not always the best feedback. This is really good feedback. This is really going to tell me, okay, am I swinging? Because if I swing over the top, I'm going to hit this, and I'm probably going to hit my sticks too, right? I don't really recommend using clubs for this because obviously I don't want to hit my driver shaft and break it. I just have this set up kind of as a reference. I recommend using alignment sticks because they're very cheap. You can get them at any like Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that. And they're like a couple dollars. You just go to the section of the store where they sell like the garage sale signs and stuff like that. I think that's usually where they have them. And you can get them. And if you break them, who cares? They're not easy to break. You can break them. I've broken a few before. But yeah, that's what I would recommend using. But it helps you to get a reference for how you're swinging through. So I think that's what you're asking for. But yeah, so my stance would be this way. And this would be an exaggeration, right? So if you're someone who's coming over the top and slicing, this would be a great setup for you. If you're someone who is swinging too much into out, this wouldn't be something that you would want to do. This is only for people who we really want to exaggerate getting that path to work more into out. Ideally, our path would be more like this, where it's maybe barely into out or pretty straight, right? Ideally, that's kind of where it would be, just a little bit into out to promote a little bit of a draw. But initially, we really want to exaggerate things and really get our path working into out. So hopefully that makes sense. But let me know if that's not exactly what you're looking for. I'm not sure I quite understood the question. So Ted D says, hi, when I apply the tennis racket drill into my swing, I hit low hooks. Any thoughts on how to fix this? Yep, keep moving through you're getting exactly what you should be getting. Keep working through the move course. In the last couple of videos of the course, we talk about turning that hook into a draw. And then we talk about, in the last video, we talk about turning that draw into a straight shot. So keep working through the move course, and you'll get that straightened out. What you're doing too much of a good thing is basically what's happening. If you're getting the hook, it means you're probably shallowing it too much and you're closing the face too much, which is exactly what we want you to do. As with anything, the best way to fix any issue in the golf swing is to exaggerate the opposite. So if you're really struggling with coming down steep and flipping and to close the face and things like that, then the move is going to be really great for you because it really exaggerate getting that face or getting that club shallowed out and getting that face square sooner in the swing. And if you do that, if I were to shallow out the club a ton, right? So that'd be like this, and then turn the handle to close it a ton. Well, then I would have this club face working, or this club working a lot into out with the face closed, and that's going to produce hooks, right? So once you get that, then you just keep working through the course to tone that down. So to get to where we're less shallowing, we're less closing the face, and that's going to get you to where the club's working more down on plane with more of a square face. So Steve B says, hi Q, please explain the turning of the top hand's wrist as the downswing starts to close the face. Please explain the turning of the top hand's wrist as the downswing starts. So that's basically this right here. So it's called wrist extension. And the wrists have to work together, right? We can't have the lead wrist bowing and then the trail wrist pushing out. Because if you see, if I do that, that's just going to be a cast. That's what a lot of people complain to me, say when they bow their wrist, they cast the club. Well, that's because they're throwing it with their trail hand as they're bowing the wrist. That's not what we want to do. We want to have both of these wrists. They have to work together to make that happen. So basically that wrist motion is wrist extension with the trail wrist. That's this right here, where we call knuckles back. So you can see when I do that, if I go up to the top and I do that, you see where I'm bowing the wrist, right? That's that wrist extension there that's happening. So as I'm coming down, I'm having that wrist extension that's happening. We don't want to go like when I'm bowing it, but then I'm pushing it out like this. I'd be casting the club. And what you're doing there is you're just really closing the face, and you're going to have a lot of hooks when you come through contact. So because that's going to make you release the club early, which closes the face, and then you're bowing the wrist, which also closes the face. That's just going to make you close the face a ton and hit a bunch of snap hooks that start left and curve left. And Ted, if that's what's happening to you, then you want to make sure that you're doing this on video. So we want to have the hands in front at impact to get forward shaft lean, right? And to get compression on the ball. So that's this wrist motion. It's this with the trail wrist. That's what we're wanting to do as we're starting down. So the best drill for that is a tennis racket drill, where we shallow out the club, and then we turn we twist the wrist, to bow and close the face. So that way we don't have to do anything as we come into contact. That face is already square. We can just turn into contact. If this face is open, then I've got to release the club just to square it up, and that's going to cause flipping and things like that. So Roger B says, I noticed the head stays mostly still from the start of this downswing through impact on video of Clay, Rory, etc. My head moves up 3 or 4 inches, even though my hip seems to be turning and clearing. Any tips on what I should focus on to fix? It's hard to say exactly without seeing your swing, but one thing I want to clear up is that I know it looks like the head's staying still, but it's definitely not. It is moving kind of down. And typically, if you look at most tour players, what you're going to see, if you lock on to them at address, what you'll see is as they go up to the top of the swing, a lot of times their head will actually move away as their body kind of turns, which is completely normal. Some of them stay fairly steady, but as they're getting up to the top, a lot of times the head will move away and will move down a little bit. So typically they're going to be moving down, a couple inches as they're loading up into their trail side and then getting into their lead side. Now, once I start falling to my lead side, I'll actually start to move down some more and forward. And from here, it's usually in this area here is when that head really gets steady. Typically from here, that head stays really, really steady as they come down to the golf ball. But until then, it's usually moving back, down and back, and then down and forward. It's typically moving. I know it's not moving a ton. We're talking a couple inches this way and a couple inches that way. But it kind of gives it that appearance, and they move around a stable spine. So again, everything looks really steady. Obviously, if you see a player who, I mean, I've seen people whose heads stay completely still, but it doesn't look like it because they're going like this with their spine and everything else. But their head is actually stays fixated and still, but their body is moving around everywhere. So it looks like they have lots of head movement, but they don't. Whereas with a tour player, their head is actually moving around a little bit, but it looks like it stays completely still because their body, their trunk is very, very stable. They have no wasted movement in that area. So again, usually it moves down and back a little bit and then down and forward a little bit until they get to about right here. And then as they get here and into impact, it stays pretty steady. Now, there's going to be some players who will, from here to impact, move up just a little bit. Like Rory, for instance, I've seen a lot of swings of him where he'll get to about right here, and then he'll be working down. And then just before impact, he'll move up just about an inch. That's completely fine as long as you're getting into a good impact position. So what it sounds like with you, if you're going up to the top here and then you're going like that, right, and you're moving your head up quite a bit, that's an indication that of early extension, right? So we're coming up out of our posture and we have early extension. So what I'd recommend doing is looking at the stop early extension course. Make sure you're in a good setup. If you're very bent over at the ball like this, typically you're going to stand up. So that's the first part of it, working on getting the right side bend in the swing. So when you come through contact and you're working on staying in your posture, you're going to have what's called side bend right here in your right side at impact. And if you're someone who stands up, right, there's no side bend there. Your spine's pretty much straight up and down. And you're just moving away from the ball. So stop early extension course. The move course can also be helpful for you because if you're coming down steep, a lot of times that standing up is a reaction to coming down steep because it helps you to get the club on plane. So I look at your swing to see exactly what's going on there, and do the right course accordingly. If you're not really sure, I know it's tough to figure these things out on your own. Let me double check and see. But I do swing reviews where I can tell you exactly what you need to work on to get this working a little bit better. And looking at it right now, it looks like I don't have any spots available. But join my waiting list, or we have other instructors too, which it looks like they don't have spots available either. But join the waiting list if you're interested in working with me or any of the other instructors to point these things out. But in the meantime, what I'd be looking at is the stop early extension course. See if any of those things kind of apply to you, and then the move course, and see if any of those things apply to you either. To get to either one of those courses, click the house icon. That's going to take you to the home page. And then if you scroll down the homepage, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Select both of those, and just they're not real. I mean, each one contains, I think the move course is about 7 videos. And none of them are really long. I think they're all under 10 minutes. And then I believe the same thing. I believe the stop early extension course is like 3 or 4 videos. And again, none of them are really long. So check those out and see if any of these things apply. Look at your swing on video and see if these things apply to your swing or not, and then work on them accordingly. That's going to help you. If you're coming down steep and you go like this to drop the club underneath, that's going to be the move. If you're not coming down steep and you tend to just, you've got this club coming down in the right plane and then you just stand up to throw it, the stop early extension course may be the one that you want to work through. If you have a setup that's a lot of bent over, really bent knees, butts too far over the heels, then the stop early extension course, that first video may be good as well. So Matthew W says, thank you, Q. Great thoughts on the into out swing. No problem, Matthew. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I just start out with shorter swing, just hit some chips, hit some draw chips, and then work your way up. So Terry M says, stop move question. What muscles or body parts starts fall, move, weight transfer to the target? That is once the right side is loaded, right hip muscles are under tension. What is the muscle sequence that triggers leading the unloading of the right hip and transfers the weight to the lead side? Thank you. It's going to be mostly in your glutes. So as you're going up to the top, you're pushing to your trail side. You're going to feel that more in here in your glutes. It's going to be some in your quads, in your calves. It's going to be mostly this trail leg, butt leg area that's going to be pushing to your lead side. That's what's triggering you, getting you to your lead side. So Michael J says, in a previous office hour session, you made a comment as an analogy of opening a door and closing a door on the hip rotation, the backswing and the forward swing. This was done so there is no sway, but the hips are pretty much staying underneath your shoulders. Did I get that correct? And if so, would you please do the motion again? So basically what I was talking about there is a good feeling for most people to have. So like I said earlier, the best way to fix any issue in golf is to exaggerate the opposite. So if your hips are moving toward the ball at any point in the swing, you want to feel like your hips, and actually try to get your hips to be moving away from the ball. And that's what that means. Technically, in the best ball strikers and tour players and things like that, the center of the hips is not moving toward the golf ball. But obviously, when I turn my hips going back, my left hip is going toward the golf ball a little bit. And then in the downswing, my right hip is moving toward the golf ball a little bit. But the center of my hips is not moving. If you were to put your hips on an axis, right, that axis is not moving closer to the golf ball. It's typically moving a little bit away from the golf ball as they move down and away. But again, the left hip in the backswing is typically, your lead hip's going to be moving toward the golf ball a little bit, and then the downswing, your right hip, because they're turning, right? But what happens a lot of times is people get, in the backswing, it's fairly less common in the backswing, but typically what I'll see is more in the downswing. People will do this motion, right? So you can see the center of my hips and everything's moving toward the golf ball. So it's a good to feel like your hips are never moving closer to the golf ball. Never. Even when you go in the backswing, I would try to feel like the left hip is not, the right hip's moving away and the left hip doesn't move closer either. So it's a good feeling to really help you to push the hips back and get loaded up properly. So a good feeling to think about that is, imagine your hips are like a door, and in the backswing, if you're right-handed, the left hip is the hinges to the door, and your door and the hips are opening up like that, right? And then in the downswing, I would imagine that your right hip are the hinges to the door, and the hips open like that. So again, you can see I'm off balance there because it's a very exaggerated feeling to have. That's what we want to do. We want to really exaggerate things to get to where you want to go. If you just try to get in the right positions, oftentimes they're not different enough from what you're already doing to really make much of a difference. And eventually you may get to where you want to go, but it's just going to take a lot longer. You're better off exaggerating things as much as possible. You got to think about, what's the worst thing that can happen if you exaggerate it? The worst thing that can happen is that you actually exaggerate it. And if you do that, just ease off of it a little bit to get to where you want to be. You're going to be able to ease off of it toward what you're more comfortable with, which is going to be fairly easy to do. So if your hips are moving toward the ball at any point in the swing, then I would focus on getting your hips to move away from the ball. I would try to feel like you're moving away from the ball, and then toward the target. That's what I would try to feel like, because there's a reason why it's called early extension. It's called early extension because we want extension. We just don't want it early, right? We would just call it extension if it was bad. Like, you had extension in your swing. You want extension in your swing. You just don't want it too early. So what I see oftentimes is people, they'll move their hips toward the target in the backswing, right? So here's my backswing, and I'm going like this, right? That's early extension. Or a lot of times they'll do both. They'll move it in the backswing and then in the downswing. Or a lot of times they'll move the hips pretty well in the backswing, but in the downswing, they'll go like this, right? The hips will move toward the ball. So that's early extension. We want extension, but we want the extension later in the swing. So if I go up to the top and I stay in my posture, I'm moving my hips properly. I'm moving my hips. The center of my hips is staying, is not moving any closer to the golf ball. And then the downswing, I have that same thing. And then I extend from there. And I extend toward the target, not toward the golf ball, but toward the target. That's where I want to feel like. So if you look at that from down the line, I'm going to be staying in my posture as I go back. And then the downswing, I'm staying in my posture as I'm coming down. And then from there, that's where I have the extension as I come through. So if I feel like I'm moving away with my hips, and then extend up, that's going to be the best feeling for most people who really, really struggle with that early extension. All right. So hopefully that makes sense, Michael. Let me know if you have any more questions about that. So Peter R says, hi, Q. How wide should I feel the club head moving back on the start of the takeaway? I try to feel it fairly wide. It's really, I mean, everybody's a little bit different, but generally it's good to feel as little wrist set as possible. And the reason for that is it gives you a little bit more momentum going this way as you start the downswing. Because let's say that I just set my wrist right away, right? So I narrowed that up. Well, as soon as I get to the top of the swing, I'm going to have a very sharp angle here. And once I've maxed out this lag, I'm going to want to release it, right? So if I max out that lag at the top, I'm going to want to release it right away. So what I want to do is I want to get this club going out wide so that that angle isn't maxed out. This angle is not maxed out until I start down. Right now, as I'm starting down, now I'm maxing out that angle, and then I can release it, right? So I would generally recommend having, a pretty wide takeaway, very little wrist set, at least in the beginning, and then slowly having a little bit of wrist set as you go up to the top, and then not fully setting those wrists until you start the downswing. That's what I would try to feel like. Now, there's a great video for getting that wide takeaway. It's in the power turn course. This is also very important for the power turn as well. So let me explain that real quick. If you pick up the club like this, right, and you don't really, and you set the wrists right away, well, you can see here, I haven't turned my shoulders very much. So I've got the club past parallel to the ground here, but I haven't really turned my shoulders very much. Now watch, if I have very little to no wrist set here, and I get the club to first parallel, now look, or I'm just past parallel, now look how much my shoulders have turned. So a lot of times when I see people, they lift up the club right away, they kind of end up like this, not a lot of shoulder turn, and then they want to release the club right away. And you just lose a lot of power from that. So if we get this club going out wider, that's going to allow me to get a much bigger shoulder turn. And then I can also have that good hinge as I start down and get that lag to start in the start of the downswing. So yeah, I would, feeling is relative, but I would work on that wide takeaway drill in the power turn course. I believe it's in level 1 of the power turn course. That's a great one to help you get that right takeaway. I believe what Clay talks about is going up to about pocket height and having that club to be parallel to the ground. So this is a good spot to be. You can see I have just maybe a hair of hinge here in the wrist. It's not completely zero wrist hinge. There's a little bit there. And you can see how much I've turned my shoulders. I'm at about pocket height here with the club. So I think that's a really great drill. To get to that power turn drill, select the instruction tab at the top of the screen there, and then select the top speed golf system, and select the power turn course. It's in level 1. You're going to see that wide takeaway drill. All right, so now we got David F again here. So David S says, do you recommend shallowing the swing and deleveraging the club face on all clubs, including 50-yard plus chips? So I think he's saying delivering the club face on all clubs. So I do recommend delivering the club face on all clubs. So yeah, so whether you need, let's understand what shallowing is. Shallowing is just getting the club on plane, is really what it means. Because typically when you swing the club up, right, the club is above the plane, and now I have to shallow it to get it back down. And you want to do that, right? We want to get the club up here and shallow it, because if we bring it up basically to where it's already shallow, then typically what's going to happen, now it can work. There are people that swing that way. Matt Kuchar kind of swings that way. He doesn't really need to shallow the club because he's already got it in a shallow position. But I often see people who try to shallow the club or get the club shallow in the backswing will typically come down steep in the downswing because of the momentum that's being created there. So if you watch here, if I bring this club back shallow, a lot of times what people will do is they'll go like this. Or a lot of times what people who bring the club back shallow, because you can't really swing long when you do that, they'll try to swing long and shallow, and they'll get this arm really stuck behind them. And then you can see my right elbow here is very bent, And then what I have to do, I have to really push that club out away from my body to get my elbow in front, because otherwise I won't be able to get to the golf ball, right? So I don't recommend swinging very, very shallow because it typically doesn't promote a good downswing. There are players that do it, like a Matt Kuchar and things like that. Obviously, it works well for them, but for most people, it doesn't work well for them. So what I recommend is getting this club more up, so that way you have space to shallow out the club. There's momentum to be able to shallow out the club. So typically a steep backswing will promote a shallow downswing. And we want to do that on full swings. Now, as far as a chip shot would be concerned, right, there isn't any need to really lift it off and get it above the plane. So you may not need to shallow the club because it may already be shallow and on plane. So you don't need to shallow if it's already there. Now, if you bring your chip shots and you have a 50-yard chip shot or pitch shot, and you bring the club up like this, kind of outside and above the plane, then yeah, you're going to need to shallow it and work it from the inside to get it on plane. But if you bring the club back and it's already there, then you really don't need to do much to get it on plane. It's already there. Now, if you bring the club up here and then you go like this, right, then you work the club out over the top, then you may need to feel like you're going like this to get it on plane. So what we want to understand is that shallowing out the club really just means getting the club on plane or slightly under the plane. That's really what it means. When we bring the club way up here, we need to drop it down onto plane. When we bring the club back in a chip, we need to bring it down onto plane. If we're bringing this club back and swinging over the top, then you're going to need to feel like you're shallowing it. So hopefully that makes sense. Mauricio R says, reviewing a video of myself driving, I see at impact that the head of the club head is overtaking the shaft, but I'm not flipping. I don't know, that's kind of an oxymoron. I don't know how you could have I think I see what you're saying. So it seems as if I am slowing the head at impact and afterwards. What drill should I do in order to get used to accelerate the head arm through impact? So I think I see what you're saying. So you're not flipping, but like the shaft has a bow in it. That's normal. So one thing to keep in mind is that it could be the camera making it look like that. And it's also normal to have a little bit of forward bow on the shaft. So that's not something I would really worry about. Now it could be the shaft doesn't kick properly for you, and you may want to get fitted. If it's too much kicking forward, then you could be losing a little bit of distance. You may need a little bit stiffer shaft to keep that to have it kick at the right time, and that'd be something a club fitter can help you with. It could also be the camera, right? So certain cameras can make it look like if the shutter speed isn't right or whatever, it can make it look like there's a lot of bowing, forward bowing on the shaft when that's not really what's going on. Because when it takes a picture, it's taking it and it's building it from the bottom up, right, or the top down. I can't remember exactly how it works. So basically, when things are moving really fast and you're swinging through, which at impact that club's gonna be moving, pretty fast. It's scanning that picture down, and the hands are going to be at a different spot than when the club head is at that split second of time. So again, it's hard to say exactly what's going on there, but it's either you have a little bit too much forward deflection on your shaft, and that has nothing to do with if you're releasing the club properly, then it has more to do with having the right shaft, because it's just not kicking at the right time, or it could just be the camera playing a trick on you and making it look like there's a lot of forward deflection there when there really is just a little bit, and a little bit's fine, because that club is technically your hands are going to be maxing out their speed typically like in this area, right, and then they're going to be slowing down. So the hands are decelerating while the club head is accelerating. That's going to make the shaft kind of forward deflect a little bit, but if it's happening too much, it's kicking too late. Hopefully that makes sense. So we got about 15 minutes left. Go ahead and keep posting your questions if you got them. If not, I'll give you a couple more minutes to post questions. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there for today. In the meantime, I'll clean up some stuff here. All right, let's scroll. While you guys are getting a question, let's scroll down and see if there were some questions posted before. I think there were a couple questions that were posted before. So Graham V asked, I don't know if it was early this morning. It must have been early this morning. He says, how do you stop lifting on the backswing? So it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but the typical thing that I see, Graham, I don't know if you're on here, but the typical thing that I see is people who, we talked about early extension earlier, people who get in a stance where their legs are very, have a lot of flex in the legs, they're very bent over at the back, their butt is over their heels too much. And if you get like this, you're typically going to stand up in the backswing, right? So if you're like that, you want to stand a little bit taller. We just want a little bit of flex in the knees, right? We want to have enough flex in the knees to where we're athletic. We can move around a little bit, right? So if you imagine if I were to shortstop going to field a grounder, I wouldn't get down like this, getting ready. I would have just a little bit of flex in my knees so that way I can react very quickly. We want to do the same thing in the golf swing, right? So a little bit, we just want to drop down just a little bit, get our butt underneath us a little bit. And then from there, so golf posture here or get shoulder width apart or whatever, however wide you like to stand, get a little bit of flex in the legs, and then let your arms just kind of hang down, right? So, and have neutral shoulders. So we're not going back like this with our shoulders, and we're not sloping down with our shoulders. I just want you to have neutral shoulders, nice and relaxed, neutral shoulders here. And just let your arms just kind of hang down and hinge at the waist until your hands get to where they're about 4 or 5 inches in front of your thighs. Once you're there, then stop and then grab the club. This is where you want to be, right here, right? So my butt's just a little bit underneath. I've got a little bit of rounding in my back, not a ton. I got a little bit of rounding in my shoulders there. I'm not sloped down like this, and I'm not like this, right? I have a little bit of rounding because I'm in an athletic position. If I were to really slope down like this, right, that puts that curve in my spine too much. It's going to be harder for me to move. If I get my shoulders set back like this, right, again, that really makes it harder for me to move because that tightens things up. So I want to be nice and relaxed, neutral shoulders, let my arms kind of hang down, and that's where I want to be, right there. If we're like this, you're going to tend to go like this. If you're in a more athletic position, you're going to tend to stay in your posture much better as you go up to the top. All right, so let's see if we got any new questions. If not, we may wrap it up there today. No, it's kind of early, but if we don't have any questions. All right, so it looks like we got a few. Wow, we got a bunch that came in. All right, so Richard R says, good session today. Awesome, great to hear, James. Richard, glad you're enjoying it. James is the next question. James C says, how about some stretching for back and hips? Yeah, I would recommend checking out our fitness section. We actually have a fitness section on the website that it's really mainly just stretches you can do. So check those out. Some really good stretches in there. This really isn't my expertise, like the stretching and stuff like that. We actually have, it's not Clay's expertise either. We actually have a fellow that helped us out and did some videos with Clay. His name's Joe Yoon. He actually wrote a book on stretching. I haven't read it, but it's got fantastic reviews on Amazon. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but if you want to know about everything there is to know about stretching or from a stretching expert, let me search. I can't remember exactly what the book is called. Better Stretching is what it's called. So Joe Yoon, Better Stretching. I'm looking at it right now. It's 4.5 stars on Amazon. And it says Better Stretching, 9 minutes a day to greater flexibility, less pain, enhanced performance. So Joe Therapy Way. So that's what he calls it. So yeah, check it out. Again, I haven't read the book, but I know Joe is an expert with this stuff, and he was kind enough to do some videos with Clay to kind of show some good golf stretches to be able to get into the positions that we talk about in the top speed golf system. So to get to that, click the house icon. That will take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage. It will typically be toward the bottom of the homepage. You'll see the fitness course there. So check it out. It's got some great stretches there to work on. So Neil B says trouble getting height from drivers. So it's usually one or two or both of these things. One, you don't have enough loft, right? So you may need to add loft to your driver. If you're swinging under 100 miles per hour, you probably don't need to be using a 9-degree driver. You probably need some loft unless you're hitting up on the golf ball at all a lot, which is the other thing. If you're hitting down on the ball, you're going to get some really low drives. So what I'd recommend is more loft if you need it, and then try hitting more up on the golf ball. And to do that, get a little bit wider with your stance, play the ball a little bit more forward, tee it up a little bit higher, and then stay behind it as you're coming through. Feel like you're staying behind it. You're more angled away as you're coming through to allow that club to work up into the ball. So Graham C says, any thoughts on the claw type putter grip? It seems to stabilize the path of the club head. Yeah, putting grip, it's really to each their own. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what the claw type is, it's basically, there's lots of variations to it, but basically it's where you take your trail hand and you put it more like this on the putter. So this would be kind of like the pencil claw. There's lots of variations. Like, I guess this would technically be kind of the claw where you hold it like this. This would be kind of the pencil variation. I mean, obviously, there's all kinds of variations you can do. But basically, what the thought process behind it is that your wrist can move a lot this way. So flexion and extension, it can't move as much. So this is radial. This is ulnar deviation. That's radial deviation. So your wrist can't move as, maybe 20 degrees, and it's not very comfortable. So if you put your wrist in maximum radial deviation, right, to where you can't go like this, it takes kind of the flick out of the stroke, and it makes you, basically have more use the big muscles more. Whereas if you hold it like this, basically you have to, if you struggle with really flicking that wrist at it, then this could be a good thing for you. I tried it because I do struggle. I have struggled with times with wanting to give it a little extra. I kind of have a slow stroke sometimes, and sometimes I can feel it, and then I give it a little extra with the wrist at the end. And I've struggled with that a little bit. It's usually something I have to think about in my putting stroke, is to keep my trail wrist solid. And I've flirted with using, kind of a claw type grip. But to me, it was really, really difficult to control speed, especially on longer putts. The shorter putts, I was fine, because there wasn't as much feel involved with the speed with that. But with the longer putts, my lag putting really suffered. I had a hard time really controlling the speed with that. So I've always been a better putter, even though I do get that little flick. Overall, I'm still a better putter if I just have kind of more of a conventional putting grip. So it's kind of to each their own. I think it can work fine, but to me, it was very difficult to get a feel for my speed control, especially 15 feet and further away. So like I was 3-putting from 15 feet too far frequently, because I was hitting the ball way too far. I just didn't have I couldn't get it to stop where I needed to. And a big, putting is all about putting it on the right line with the right speed, right? So if you can't get the right speed, that's going to hurt you. So for me, that's why I didn't try. But again, it's to each their own. It can be, there's obviously a lot of players that use, and a lot of great putters that use like a claw type grip, and it works very, very well for them. And it could be something that could work really well for you, but it wasn't something that worked the greatest for me. It took away a little bit of my feel. And you can develop that feel with a lot of practice, but it wasn't something that I really want. I still felt that, I could take that time and practice doing it the right way with my normal stroke, and I'd probably be ahead doing that. So Michael J says, does high ball flight with my irons indicate that I am not having forward shaft lean? Yeah, it could be. Typically, loft and speed are basically what make the ball get up in the air. So you kind of want to temper that a little bit. So let's say you play with people that don't have a lot of speed and you hit the ball a lot further than them. Well, you're going to hit the ball a lot higher than they do. And it could be that you have, you don't have forward shaft lean, or or it could be that you have a lot of speed. You have to look at what pieces are when you're doing that. So I would look at your swing on video. If you're releasing the club early, like before what we talked about in the straight line release course, then it's possible that you could be releasing the club too early, and I'd work on the straight line release. But it could also be that you have a lot of speed. You imagine if I launch this ball, right, and this ball is launching and I hit it with 100-mile-per-hour ball speed. Well, then on the same launch on it, and it only gets up to about right here, right? So if I have, so here's the horizon, right? And let's say this shot, we launch it at about 10 degrees and it's got like 150-mile-per-hour ball speed, right? Well, now if I take this same shot and I launch it at the same angle, and now I have 150-mile-per-hour ball speed. Well, look how much higher it goes, right? So you can see it reached a much higher height there just because of the speed. So it wasn't necessarily because this person was flipping; it was because they hit it much higher because they had a lot more speed to the shot. So that's also something to consider there. So a couple more here, and then we'll wrap it up. So Ted D says, what are the pros and cons of having the club facing the ball versus rolling your wrists and having the club face away from the ball on the backswing? Okay, I see what you're saying. So on the backswing, if you're really rolling the face open, so whatever you do in the backswing, you have to do in the downswing. So I would, if someone's really rolling the face open in the backswing and then they're having trouble squaring up the face or leaving the face open at impact, then that would be something I would try to get them to get that club face not rolling open so much, because whatever you do in the backswing, you have to do in the downswing, right? You have to get that coming back, right? So if that person's rolling the face open and then not rolling it back closed, then we may want to change that. That's a disadvantage. But hey, if you're someone who rolls that face open and then you get in a great impact position, then changing it's not really going to make it may make it more difficult for you. You may close the face too much, right? So I'd only really change if it's causing an issue at impact. Now, the advantage of not rolling the face open, right? So let's say you're someone who really keeps that face closed in the backswing, and then you come in the downswing and the face is even more closed, right? Well, if that's the case, then you may want to get the face to open a little bit in the backswing, so that way you're not getting it too closed at impact. So that's basically what it comes down to. Now, the way I would look at it is it's a little bit of wasted move. Really rolling the face open, it means you're gonna have to roll the face closed in the downswing. So it's kind of wasted movement. If you keep the face mostly square throughout the swing, there's less wasted movement there, and that's typically better. But hey, you may hit the ball better if you open the face a little bit on the backswing. But opening the face in the backswing may also make you hit the ball worse, depending on what's happening at impact there. So David CM says, do you have a drill to stop dipping my head as I swing down? I also have in my chest. I also cave in my chest as I come down. So I'm not really sure. So if you're dipping down, you actually want to move down in the downswing. You just want to make sure that you push and rotate the hips open. So since we're a little bit limited on time here, I'd recommend checking out the release legs video. Just search release legs, and that's going to help you to be able to release the club, because you want to actually dip down. You just want to use the legs to rotate the body open. So dipping down is a good thing. I'm having a little bit trouble visualizing what you mean by cave the chest on the downswing. Are you saying that you kind of go like this? So you dip down and you go like that? I'm having that doesn't usually go together. I'm having a little bit of trouble. So if you're going like this and really kind of, your shoulders are around your chest, that's typically from early extension and having to, which is the opposite of dipping down. So if you have early extension, then I'd recommend working on the stop early extension course. If you're dipping down and you're not rotating through, then I recommend that release legs drill. And you define that, just search release legs on the website, upper right hand corner. Release legs is what I would search, and you'll find the video that I'm talking about there. If you're on a mobile device, select the icon in the upper right hand corner, and you'll scroll down when that expands the menu, and then you can search release legs there. I believe it's in the compression line course, but that one's a good one to help you get the feeling of we want to dip down, but then we want to open up the body. So we want to get to where we're getting here, and then we're opening up. If you're just dipping down and then going like that, that can be an issue, and I'd use that release legs drill to help you with that. So Graham C says, good insight into putting using the claw. Thanks, you. No problem, Graham. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Reminder, no office hours Thursday or Friday. And I'll see you Monday after tomorrow's office hours. Take care.